Hey everyone, my name is Megan Kerstetter and welcome to my art channel. Today is my first major video of 2018 and I am super excited to share with you my thoughts on why I chose to make it. This video will be the first in a segment of Draw YouTuber speed arts that I want to do about every month or so. Now, I'll admit, I don't watch too many YouTubers, but when I find someone that is my brand of entertaining and they're easy to listen to while I'm drawing, I'm usually pretty hooked. That being said, the first YouTuber I've chosen to draw is actually someone that I just started watching and was a big inspiration to me to start doing more with my channel. He's a professional voice actor, and you've probably seen his video where he's singing Let It Go in a whole slew of Disney character voices. If you haven't, I recommend you go check out his channel here. His name is Brian Hall, and he is crazy talented. After watching his covers, I saw there was a group of videos where he answers questions and opens fan mail. I was curious, so I played a few, and I was just so uplifted by his bright and energetic personality. Seriously, this guy is just so nice and considerate to all of his fans, doing impressions for them and just having a good time. When he had mentioned in passing that doing YouTube videos when he was younger was therapeutic, I actually really took it to heart. The idea of self-expression through video and voiceover greatly appeals to me. Now, I'm not saying I'm a voiceover artist, although that would be pretty awesome if I did do some drawings and then did the voices to go with them. Maybe in the future, guys? But I found myself thinking, I can do videos like this even if no one really watches. I can just have fun saying what's on my mind and how I feel about my art. Maybe I'll even connect with some cool people like Brian or his fans. I know that sounds super cheesy, but the idea got me really pumped to work more seriously on my channel. And since he was such a big inspiration to me, I decided, why not do a drawing for him? Immediately I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and that was to make a poster depicting Brian in a Disney-esque style, while surrounded by some of the characters he does impressions of, plus a few of his favorites. Now, after 3 months with very little drawing, I knew this was going to be a tall order. If you've seen my previous video, you'll know that the reason I stopped drawing was because I've been struggling with anxiety and depression. At the time I saw Brian's videos, I was constantly trying to find something to occupy my thoughts and escape from reality. Puzzles, reading, audiobooks, video games, anything so my mind wouldn't have to deal with the fears it had created for me to obsess over. Then one day I find this YouTuber who is just so happy doing what he loves and connecting with his community. And I realized I saw in him traits of the kind of person I once was and who I wanted to be again. So I made my first YouTube video with a narration, and it turned out fairly well. But this drawing was going to be way bigger than just one random character that I came up with just to draw for the sake of drawing. I was going to actually draw characters that people were familiar with, and I wanted them to look like their original designs, not my own depictions of them. I wasn't even sure if I could pull it off. Could I even get these characters to look right? I mean, I had only drawn Mickey Mouse once or twice in my life, let alone a whole cast of characters that look completely different from what I usually draw. But I was pleasantly surprised because as I worked, I started to see I could actually draw them. It took time, the whole image took over 55 hours to complete, but I could still draw, and I was doing it for someone else. This act lit a fire in me that actually overpowered the negative cloud I was constantly feeling. Now, I'm not saying all my problems went away, far from it, but by finding something I was excited about doing, I was able to focus more on the good I could do with my life, instead of the bad I thought I was creating in it. Okay, so I've said a lot about why I did this image, but not really talked about the piece itself. I knew that if I was going to do a group of characters, I wanted them to connect with the person I was making it for. So I chose characters that I remembered Brian had said were his favorites, as well as those that were iconic to his channel. I'll admit, I also added some of my favorites as well. I honestly don't know what a recording room looks like, but from what I could find on the net, I did my best. I know Dumbo is one of Brian's favorite characters and that he loves elephants, so I added him in as Minnie's assistant. I put the Beast and the Hulk in as spectators, and I have to say I liked drawing the Beast a lot and was really happy with how well he eventually turned out. Other characters I knew I wanted to be in the picture were Pumbaa and of course Timon, because you just can't draw one without the other. Again, those two characters were really fun to draw. Lion King was the first movie I ever saw in theaters as a kid, and growing up it was one of my favorite Disney movies aside from 101 Dalmatians. Two other characters that I really love Brian's impressions of are Tigger and Pooh. I think the first character drive-through video I saw him do was with Winnie the Pooh and Tigger, and I just loved it. My mother is a big fan of Pooh, and I was thinking of her while I was drawing him. So, Mom, when you watch this, you should know that part of the picture is for you. Another character I knew I wanted in the picture was Colonel Happy. It took me a minute to get his signature stick position right, and eventually I set it up to be like he was singing into a microphone. I also added Kaa from the Jungle Book as well, because I like his design, and he was easy to place above the other characters. Some other characters I wanted to add, aside from the Disney ones, were a couple of Looney Tune characters. Bugs and Daffy were a must, and I got the idea that I wanted to put a little joke in with some Looney Tunes humor. So I drew Bugs Bunny holding a Pokeball with his signature mischievous look, and added Charizard behind him. If you look close at the finished image, you can see that Charizard has actually lit Daffy Duck's head on fire. Other Looney Tunes characters I added were Speedy Gonzales, Tweety Bird, and the Tasmanian Devil. Taz was by far my favorite Looney Tune to draw. He is literally a mouth with arms and legs. I put Speedy Gonzales in even though I actually don't remember him from the Looney Tunes cartoons, but after I saw him, I thought he was super cute. Guys, I felt so ridiculous when I looked up his design. I literally thought Speedy Gonzales was the name of a race car driver, and that the saying people used was referring to an actual person. Turns out he's been a cartoon mouse all along. Last of the Warner Brother characters is Lego Batman. I know I've heard Brian do a Batman voice, but I thought I'd put in the Lego version of him for humor's sake. I just love seeing the scale of him next to the other characters because it's just so funny that Batman is the smallest character in the room. I wanted to add some Dreamworks characters in too, so I chose Gingy from Shrek and Po from Kung Fu Panda. Shrek is another movie I remember seeing in theaters. I realized after looking up Gingy's design, he actually has little icing stitches on his legs from when Prince Farquaad interrogated him. This was just such a great little idea, and I love that the animators added it into his character. I added Po because Kung Fu Panda is just such a fun series, and I thought it would be really fun to draw him. Pandas are probably my favorite bear, so I am a bit biased. Then there's Scooby Doo, and as you could probably tell, he was the hardest character to draw. It was just something about the style, but I managed to finish him in the end, and I'm really happy with how he turned out. On another note, I knew I really wanted him in the picture because he was the first voice Brian had said he'd ever done. Other Disney characters I added were Ray from Princess and the Frog, and I had to get at least one Pixar character in there, so I chose to draw Crush. I also added Sebastian, Lumiere, and Cogsworth. These characters seem to be extra popular on Brian's channel, and of course, I really enjoy hearing his impressions of them. And finally, I added Stitch, who seems to be doing a sort of photobomb in the left corner. I wanted to use him as a sort of balance to Brian's character that was on the other side. Again, I admit, Stitch was added because he is one of my favorites. Lastly, Brian's character was drawn with his signature necklace as well as a microphone. I also gave him a bright and happy expression. Not only is he depicted as doing what he loves, but I figured if I was magically turned into a cartoon and surrounded by all these characters, I would be pretty happy too. Now that I've gone through basically all the reasons for why I made this image, I think it's time I actually started talking about the construction of it. As you already saw, I started out with a very rough idea of where I wanted the characters to be placed. Then I began to pull references from the net and put down the rough sketches. So, funny story, I did not have Wi-Fi at the time I was making this. I actually had to plug my phone into my computer and pull up the screen so I could take screenshots of the characters. Luckily, later on, I did have an internet connection to my computer, which made things a lot easier. I used at least 2 poses to get the positions I wanted to put the characters in. Some are closer to one of the poses, while others are a mixture of the two. I didn't want to draw the characters exactly as they were in my references, which worked for some. Others I really had to so I could measure their features correctly. Mickey and Bugs Bunny were 2 of the characters I had to repeatedly go back and adjust. Mickey was actually the character I wanted to get the most right because, well, he's the face of Disney, and I wanted to get him as accurate to his original design as possible. Another difference about this image is that instead of using a rough ink brush like I usually do, I went with a hard round brush. This was to preserve the look of the original cartoons, though in a couple places my line art got a bit rougher than I would have liked, but overall I did my best to keep the lines as smooth as possible. Another thing I did to keep track of certain markings and shapes on the characters was to make a separate layer with gray marking the spots where color would go in the future. You can see I like to have my references up even when I'm just doing the line art because there might be something that I had missed in the past and things that I want to adjust. You can also see parts where I've moved the characters around. That's because some of the areas they weren't very pleasing to the eye, and I didn't want to have too many tangents in the piece. I know that I have a few, and I was like, no, I don't want that, but in the end, I'm still pretty happy with the placement of the characters. It worked out fine, and yeah, it's good. So as I was drawing, I was going back and forth on whether or not I was going to beef up some of the line work. In the end, I felt like I really needed to because sometimes I just can't leave my line work all the same size. For this image in particular, I am considering making this available as a coloring page, and without color, I really wanted the line work to look good by itself. So yeah, would any of you Holomaniacs like a coloring page? If so, let me know in the comments, and if enough people are interested, I'll definitely make that available for you. As I'm going, I'm thickening the lines of the characters that I want to stand out the most. Usually this means the characters that are sitting closer to the front of the piece will have a thicker outline, while those that recede will be thinner. That being said, you also want to have some line variation on the inner parts of the characters as well as the outline. I think I may have been able to push that further here, but I kept wanting to preserve the animation look of the image. What this really teaches me is that I need to start becoming more comfortable with making decisions one way or the other, instead of sitting on the fence and hesitating going either way. When I'm done with the line art, it's time to go in with the flat colors. This is one of the instances the program Clip Studio Paint comes in handy because, unlike Photoshop, you can adjust how far the bucket tool can dump the paint. I usually have it extended at about 1 or 2 pixels. In Photoshop, I actually made an action with the wand and fill tool. It would automatically extend, fill, and delete the selection when I used a specific command key. I like working both ways, but since getting Clip Studio Paint, I pretty much use this program for all my pieces. That's not to say I couldn't make the same action in Clip Studio, I just find that using the bucket tool is sufficient. Since I haven't found a way to make masks separate from the layers in Clip Studio, I kind of cheated a bit by filling in the silhouettes of the characters on their own separate layers. This way, if I wanted to select just the outline of the characters, I could just press Command and click the layer the silhouette was on. Of course, this didn't go completely without flaw for me. I kept wanting to try different ways of shading. For some reason, I was having a really hard time figuring out what tools I wanted to use. In the end, I really should have just left the character base colors on separate layers and possibly flattened them later, after I'd shaded. Eventually, I ended up putting all the silhouettes on one layer after changing each of their colors. I don't know why I thought this would make things easier because it ended up having the opposite effect. I think I just really wanted to get rid of some of the layers because things were starting to look too cluttered. Oh well, guess I'm gonna have to figure something out for next time. Like I said before, I used the silhouettes to select the characters and then went in with a soft round brush, working first with a large brush and then a smaller one. This helps give me an idea of where I want the shading to be, and I feel makes the cell shading that I do next look a bit more interesting. Once again, I was a bit on the fence about the shading. At first, I tried to do a soft shaded look like you see in Disney movies, but I just didn't like how it was turning out. I wanted to keep it simple though, so I chose to cell shade the whole image, and if I didn't like it in the end, I would go back and try something different. Overall, I wanted to keep the shading simple. Well, that's pretty much it. You can see that I go in a couple times with the transform tool to adjust some details. I also fill in any color the bucket tool may have missed. Additionally, I have a bit of a cheat to catch little spots that are missing color, usually in crevices of the line art. Basically, I put a final layer below all the others and fill it black. Most of the time, this will cover up any tiny gaps. Oh yeah, actually, I did put in some last minute details like Bugs Bunny's whiskers, some highlights, and lighting effects where necessary. I used an overlay layer to give the image a warm color so it would be friendly and inviting. How did you guys like the video? Any feedback you have would be welcome. I know at this point my camera and mic are not very good. The microphone is something I plan on fixing in the near future, but the camera will need to be my phone or computer for the time being. Is there any particular content you would want to see me draw or talk about? Let me know in the comments below. And as for this piece, tell me what you think. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up button. And if you want to see more of my work, you can subscribe to my channel. I'd like to say thank you to Brian Hall for inspiring me to work on my channel and for passing on a hope that is helping me look forward to the future. Keep doing what you do because it does brighten people's lives. To everyone who watched this video, thanks for being here, and I can't wait to see you later.